Okay, I got a lot of responses towards my recent Devil May Cry review in regards to a lot of things. Now, couple things to note before I get into why I'm even making this video. One, the responses I got, for the most part, there are a few exceptions, were actually relatively constructive. Most people didn't chew me out. Some insulted my intelligence, but that was about as far as it went, which is impressive, because my experience with the Devil May Cry fanbase has not been a positive one thus far. So it's nice to see that some fans are willing to talk before they chew me out. The second thing is that, basically all the complaints I got, at least legitimate ones, had to do with Devil May Cry 3 in particular, because I missed some rather important aspects of the game, and people wondered why I didn't go into it. But before I get into that, I just want to say, my complaints about Devil May Cry and Devil May Cry 2 still totally stand. Why? Well, for one, nobody had a single issue with what I said of Devil May Cry 2. Nobody likes that fucking game, okay? It's boring. It sucks. It's not as good as the other two. Alright? Even I, as someone who's really not a fan of the series, will say that. Devil May Cry, in the first place, anyone who had an issue with what I said even admitted that the game hasn't aged well. And, it really hasn't. It's a button masher, I'm sorry. It's just not as good as, games that came out after it, including the ones in its own series. But, everyone admitted that, and I'm not taking back a single thing I said about that game, because, I was fairly nice. Even I admitted that most of the problems with it probably had more to do with its age, rather than the fact that it was ever a bad game. So, I'm not taking anything back when it comes to that. But now we get Devil May Cry 3. This is the one where everyone got offended. For one, everyone needs to chill the fuck out. It's a video game. Okay, seriously? This is why I don't talk about this shit. This is why I didn't want to go into it. Because everyone gets really sensitive about Devil May Cry for some fucking reason if you're a big fan. I understand if you're, really invested in the series and you really like the games, but I'm sorry, you didn't need to get really that fucking mad. But in terms of this game, there were some things I said that weren't necessarily not true, but more spoken out of someone who didn't realize certain aspects of the game even existed at all. Now, to clear something up, at least one person pointed out that they didn't think I played very far in any of the games, which isn't true. I've beaten 2, because you can beat that game by slamming your face into your controller. Alright, seriously. And 3, I've played a pretty decent chunk of. And 1, for that matter. 3, I've gotten, if you must know, I've gotten up the tower and to that giant fish thing before I stopped playing. That was the first time I played. That was about 5 years ago. The footage you saw, was only from the beginning part of the game. That's all I really needed to talk about it. After all, my review wasn't exactly in-depth. It wasn't going through the entire game, point by point, throughout the whole thing. It was just a little overview to give my opinion of the game, because that's what everyone wanted. But, in terms of my opinion, there were some things I said that weren't exactly true. Now, things I'm not taking back. One, the whole lack of a dodge and block button thing. You can roll. It's in the game. It exists. I know. But having to hold down R1 just gets really awkward. I vastly preferred it in Devil May Cry 2 when the roll was a single touch button, and that's all it was. It's just easier to work with. And really, every other game of Devil May Cry's type, like I said, Bayonetta, God of War, Ninja Gaiden, all have simple to use dodges if they don't have blocks. And in fact, I'm pretty sure all but maybe Bayonetta, in fact I think even Bayonetta, has a block, which I'm pretty sure doesn't really exist in this game. Actually, no, what? I think it does with one of the styles. That was the thing I missed. That was the big one. And this is where I will admit fault. I didn't talk about the styles. Why? I didn't know they existed. Why? Because the game never told me. Why? Because I didn't turn on the fucking tutorial. Yeah, I know. That's totally fucking my bad, okay? I never turn on tutorials in games. I just figured it was, a pretty self-explanatory hack and slash, but no, in terms of, content, there's more depth to this. Basically, the styles in this game allow you to change how you play the game. The one by default is the one I hate, which is Trickster. It's the one with that silly dash that really doesn't help that much. I couldn't stand that. But I thought that was the way the game was meant to be played. I was wrong. There are other styles that change what the style button does. Instead of a dash, everyone recommended I actually switch to Swordmaster, which turns that button into another melee attack. That thing I've been begging for this whole time in the entire Devil May Cry series? 3 gave it to me. I just didn't know it was there. I am well aware that is totally my bad, because it didn't turn the tutorial on. But really, you know, I didn't know. I'm not even gonna try to justify it. Okay, yeah, I missed it. I fucked up. All right, I'm willing to admit that, and I'm sorry. All right, I was trying to be nice throughout this whole thing. I really was, and I'm still not a huge fan of Devil May Cry. But you know what? When I sat down and played 3 again with a different style set on, all of a sudden I started to have fun because, now the game was suddenly playable. I started to adapt to the role. I still don't like it, but it's not unresponsive. That's not the word for it. That's the way it was in the first game. I still stand by that. But here, everything's more fluid and ironed out. I see why people say this is the best game in the series, because even I, someone who really doesn't like Devil May Cry, will have fun with it. So I apologize for speaking out of ignorance. I honestly didn't know it was there, but that's my fault. And you know what? I'm sorry. So, yeah, Devil May Cry 3, it's not as bad as I said it was. But really, I never said the game was bad, did I? Like, ever? I said I don't like the games and I think they suck, which, was an unfair statement for the most part, but that was my opinion. I never said Devil May Cry 3 was bad. In fact, the other one that I said was really a bad game was 2. The worst I said about the other 2 were that they were button mashers, and that's only the case for 1, in my opinion. 3, as long as you switch to a different style, you're going to be pressing more than the melee attack button, which, thank motherfucking Christ for that. So yeah, my bad. Like I said, I'm sorry, and we'll hope that never happens again. I really don't want to have to do this. I hate admitting when I'm wrong. But in this case, I am wrong, and I had to admit. So, I hope that clears a lot of stuff up. I hope you guys liked the review for the most part. I understand some of you were annoyed, and I hope this clears up anything I missed. Like I said, I still don't like the series, but you know what? I fucked up when it came to 3, and that's my fault. So until next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.